Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast interview. We have the dynamic duo on today's show. We have Karrie Sudbrack. She's the VP of Dealer Sales and Performance Management at Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book. And we have Kevin Frye, who should be someone you recognize from all his years of investment and education at automotive conferences. He's the marketing director and automotive technology innovator at the Wyler Automotive Group. Karrie, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Brian.
Well, I wanted to have both of you on today's show because Wyler and Cox Automotive have had a long-standing relationship of innovation. I know, Kevin, you've pushed Cox very hard over the years to provide solutions that meet the needs of your group, and both of you have an interesting view of what's going on in automotive. So today I want to talk about where we are in our vision for what modern retailing looks like, what marketing messages should be out to the consumer, what's working and what's not working, and how's technology moving the consumer's buying and ownership experience forward in a more positive way. So let me start with you, Kevin. As you look at the changes that have happened post-pandemic, we're looking into 2023 with still no clarity on new inventory stocking levels. We also have some manufacturers looking at a more build to order mindset. And yet you're the marketing director. When you think of your marketing strategy for 2023 at a very high level, we're going to dive into it, but what are you going to be focusing on in the year ahead?
I would say one thing, we're going to transition away the traditional calls to action of like, hey, we've got the largest selection, the largest amount of inventory, and switching more to, hey, we are your partner here to find the car that you need and that you want, whether it's in that dealership's inventory, one of our 23 locations inventory, whether we need to help you order that vehicle, whatever the case may be. So it's more of branding and experience that we're a partner with you in that vehicle search.
Well, you know, that echoes exactly what I've been talking on the road this year, talking about the three things that you could be doing in your marketing. Number one, talk about, hey, we have an action team that can locate cars for you, custom order or build to order. Hey, we want to buy your vehicle, and we're the EV resource in your local community. These are all things we could do. Now, Karrie, as you look across your massive amounts of data that Cox has from the thousands of dealers who are using the platform, is Kevin's approach typical, or is he leading the way? Are people still thinking, hey, price payment and I got $2,000 off on this vehicle, or are they shifting? What do you see?
Yeah. You know what? That's great. And that's why we partner so well with Kevin. One, because of his directness, and he keeps us thinking and looking to new ways to think about marketing and consumers as well. But we have so much data, and I know you talk about this a lot, Brian, in terms of data, should really lead your strategy in many ways. And one thing that has been really a standout for what Kevin has done in partnering with us and what we see from a consumer standpoint is focus on matching the consumers, the shoppers where they are, not necessarily selling the inventory. As Kevin just mentioned, there's a really huge push from a consumer standpoint of, are they a lease customer? Are they a potential new car buyer? Are they, in your service bay, 4 or 5 times a year? And how do you really match where they are in their process versus just sending this blasted message in terms of, largest inventory and, our hours and when we're here. It's more about really tailoring your message, as Kevin is focused on doing, to that new consumer and that new shopper in the market now.
Karrie, I was just thinking as you were saying that, I think today's commercials, Kevin, should be, we have the largest empty lot in all of Ohio. When you drive by Wyler, and you've been there for many years, I'm sure you chuckle at the days where you ran out of space to put cars, and today we're trying to figure out what to do to make the lots look not so empty. So it brings us to this question of build to order, or just pre-ordering a consumer's next vehicle. How are you getting that message out? Like, what channels do you believe are effective to let the consumers know, hey, in this world, we have to move to maybe a pre-order mindset? And number two, are consumers really doing it in a bigger shift, not just because they have to?
Boy, it kind of gets into a quicksand kind of area, Brian, because I'm a huge supporter of the build to order, and I know Karrie is as well. But the reality is, at the dealership level, you find across the country there's a lot of resistance. At the end of the day, we are in the people business. We manage people. And while something might look fantastic on paper, lower floor plan expense, quicker turn, you name it, the reality at the dealership level, whether they're going to embrace it, can be a different story.
I can understand that shift. Would, Kevin, you feel that dealers would then feel like, hey, am I just like a delivery center then? And if I'm just a delivery center, what's going to stop consumers from just doing all their orders on the tier one side?
It's a combination of things, and I'm on the front line of this every day, and so everybody knows I'm very direct. The reality is, a lot of dealers are like, hey, why would I build to order a car and sell it at MSRP when I can just work to allocate the car directly, add on my F&I package, whatever the case may be, the market adjusted price, which is averaging around 3 to 5% above MSRP, and make more money. There's been some gamesmanship where, let's say, certain dealers might be creating names to order cars to gain some advantage in allocation. And then at the simplest level, some dealers just don't want to do the additional work to actually do a build to order, take a deposit, etc., rather than the traditional way. And these are some of the direct challenges that we need to overcome as we're going into this future market.
Karrie, Cox does a tremendous amount of research. I get some of the Cox Market Insights reports every week on used car, new car. Is Cox seeing a future where a growing number of, as a percentage of total dealer sales, are going to be pre-ordered? There's so much mixed signals. Someone says, hey, as soon as, I'm just going to use an example, Toyota and Hyundai start filling dealer lots with inventory, GM and Ford are going to get off their build to order pulpit, and they're going to go back to the way they were, because no one wants to lose market share. Is Cox seeing like, hey, in 2023, 10-20% of new car sales could be all pre-order?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I chuckle when you say that, because I think about the three areas in which we work. And I was at a conference, an OEM conference, and the percent was very high in terms of a prediction of over the next 5 years of new car order. And then there's the retail dealer marketplace, where we have, and I work directly with our performance management teams for all of our operational businesses and services like Viato and Bin Solutions, much like what Kevin was just referencing. thinking about, dealers specifically and operationalizing a new car order process. And, some of the as Kevin always teases me, like, you might want to stay away from some of those conversations because practices are very different within the retail dealer world. But what I hear from our Auto PM performance managers, our VIN Solutions performance managers, is there's a lot of focus, but they're all over the board in terms of what do we project as a percentage of new car order versus marketing to the used vehicles. And then interestingly, what we are talking about is more from a consumer perspective lens, because I represent in that world too. So there's so much data that shows consumers are very open to ordering their vehicle if they know what to expect. And so we're really trying to align that messaging internally with dealers, direct dealers who are on board with that process and see their future in a pre-order world. But it's also, you have to educate the consumers and meet their expectations, or at least set their expectations so they're not disappointed. Because consumers we're seeing are definitely willing to purchase if they can get what they want. And some are, as we see, which is shocking, are open to waiting 6, 7, 8, 9 months in some cases to get exactly what they want at hopefully a price that they're comfortable in living with. So it's a really interesting marketplace now in terms of perspectives of where new car will land over the next 3 to 5 years.
And, as Kevin, you've said, you have to be careful of the quicksand. And one of the challenges today at Tier 3, that most Tier 3 website platforms don't have competent tools to actually build a vehicle as well as, say, a Tier 1 website and reflect all the rebates, incentives that are currently in market. So we're in this weird time where the Tier 3 dealer really can't encourage build to order on their website. So it means they have to come in. And Kevin, if you are an advocate for education of the local consumer, which I know you are, if I saying, hey, I want to get more consumers to come in and pre-order, which marketing channels? Obviously, if you had a video, and you guys make some great videos, if you showed a video, look, come in, we'll locate the car in the US. If anybody has it, we'll try to get it. If not, we have our, Wyler direct team that will sit down with you and custom order it. If I created that video to educate consumers, that's what they need to do. And Karrie said consumers are willing to wait, and I agree. Which marketing channels would you use to get that message out?
Well, I'm going to surprise you here because I'm going to answer this from 2 different directions. Number one, for the build to order, we need to make it advantageous to the dealers to want to do that. And the number one way to do that today is with inventory allocation. So the OEM needs to reward the dealer for doing a build to order with a better allocation setup.
Come on, preach.
So I'll go transition to the other side. The direction we would really like to go is if you do a build to order, it would be great to be transactional. And that's why we're using the Essential platform right now with Cox Automotive. Currently, that's a used car only platform. I know they're working towards new cars, but if you had the ability to build that car out, put a deposit online, that to me is the future. That is the Tesla model, the Vroom model, whatever the case may be. Automotive has been behind on that for the last few years, but we're rapidly catching up.
Great. So we need an upgrade in our tool set. I think every dealer listening should be aware that on many websites, if the car isn't in stock or in transit, it doesn't even show on the website. So they couldn't even see what an MSRP is of that trim level vehicle that they want. So we need new tools. But let's just say for now, they can come into the dealership and place an order. And if I wanted to get more consumers comfortable with that concept, and you created a video and say, hey, we make it easy to custom order your car, what marketing channels would you use?
I'm going to focus primarily on video, and I'm going to address the three primary questions that have existed for car shoppers probably since the 1930s. You can figure out how much per month you're going to pay, see how much you're going to get for your trade, and get pre-approved. That's all part of the traditional digital retailing tool. And by answering those three questions, you're building value and trust, and you're winning the decision of the consumer to buy from you. And the final point, Brian, is the convenience of being able to do that build to order and get exactly what they want. And the great news is they are willing to pay full price. They're willing to pay a premium for convenience.
That is true. I'm just hearing my neighbors talk about, how many months they're waiting, but they said, I got it exactly configured the way that I want. And it is a changing time. And Karrie, when you are looking at the transactions that are going through the Essential platform, are you seeing more deeper use of the tool? Meaning, at one point, people were saying, hey, digital retailing tools are just fancy lead collectors. But I think as COVID showed, and as supply and demand market forces have shown, consumers are more willing to do more online because they know they can't go to the dealership to see it. Are you seeing more near completed transactions on the Essential platform than ever before?
Yeah, and I'll answer that and flip it to Kevin as part of that response, because and Brian, I've heard you say this a million times. It's like the best thing you could do is test, and test again. And the Essential platform has been, we've been working on this as Cox Automotive for several years now. And when you ask, are they going deeper? It's interesting because digital retailing, it's like, what does that really mean? It's like, how much is a consumer willing to do online before they hop off and want to do more on site? And so when you think about fully transacting online in all of the areas, to know how much you're going to pay, to know what your trade's worth, to get pre-approved with multiple lenders and lenders of your choice, you can go so deep within the platform. And that's the reason we really started with the used side first versus jumping into the complicated part, working with OEM partners, as Kevin mentioned earlier. But you can go as deep as you would like to in that process, in that online, easy to transact process as a consumer now than you've ever been able to do before. And that's when you talk about, I think that is modern retailing, but it's essential. It's the Essential platform that provides really, truly e-commerce, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about an Amazon-like purchase where you can go on and you click to order and it arrives at your home. And so it's how many consumers are really comfortable and trusting, but the platform can go as deep as someone like Kevin is willing to take it.
And Kevin, when we talk about the changing environment in the way in which consumers will buy cars, how they transact, getting the right message in front of the right person. Karrie has mentioned it. You've mentioned it. You have different strategies for the different types of buyers. There's been a lot of talk about leveraging third-party data, managing your first-party data better. And tell you the truth, it seems like every day someone must be knocking on your door telling you that they have even better data than the next guy who left her office. What are you finding as a reliable and effective way to target consumers in this retail environment?
So I am a tremendous fan of leveraging third-party data. And I will say first, on first-party data, I think we just beat that to death. And in fact, if anything, in many cases, we need to pull down with all of the different efforts we have on our first party data. However, in the big scheme of things, as a marketing director, my job, Brian's pretty simple. I want to put my message in front of an in-market shopper that is shopping for what I sell in the area I'm targeting. And I can spend a fortune in marketing and trying to get in front of those people. Or what I recommend is if you leverage third-party data, what we're doing essentially is we're piggybacking off of the huge spends by these third-party data or third-party partners like AutoTrader, KBB, Car Gurus, Cars.com, Edmunds, etc. They're pulling in the actual audiences I'm trying to get my message in front of. And then what I'm doing is I'm partnering with them, that third-party data, to get my message in front of that shopper, you name it, right across the board. And what we have found, it is significantly cheaper and it converts better than the traditional SEM approach.
And let me dive into that a little bit. Before I ask Karrie the question, let me just set the stage for our listeners. You know, dealers have had a love-hate relationship with third-party classifieds. And a few years ago, when there was a turn that the third-party marketplaces realized that their audience data could be leveraged to power better social media campaigns and Google Ads campaigns, and even email marketing campaigns. And, you know, I've been covering this honestly because, hey, as a marketer myself, if I tried to use a Facebook audience or a Google audience in what they might call auto intenders, and I compare that to an audience that Cox provided of people who went to KBB or AutoTrader, the Cox audience always wins. And I'm just tired of dealers saying, oh, I don't need any third-party classifieds. I'm going to do everything myself. Karrie, I'm still puzzled why it is an emotional decision for so many dealers when Cox and other third-party marketplaces are spending millions and millions of dollars for brand awareness. People are coming to those portals not for clothes, not for shoes, not to buy tires. They're there to look for vehicles. Why are dealers stubborn on this idea of I can create my own audience better than Cox?
Yeah, it's funny because the way you posed the question to Kevin of, hey, you have somebody approaching every day of like, our data's, better than anyone else's. All data is so valuable. And so when you think with Cox, we invest, and this is something that we are proud to share with all of our dealer partners, is the investment that we make in the marketplaces. Because that's the value. The value is the data, and then using that data to build out campaigns. That's where I think it becomes an education process. And so I think anytime there's conferences like yours talking about, great ways to use data, I've learned from Kevin so much in terms of how he really digs in and uses the data. And that's the strategy. It's no longer how many leads are you providing? And, some of that is not that leads aren't valuable, they are. But when you think about what you can do to create your own strategy, if you own your business, and like you said, they are shopping for vehicles, and you can put together based on these third party, whether it's AutoTrader, and Kevin mentioned Car Gurus, and like we can pull all of that data and show all of these buying signals to where you can create campaigns. I know I sound like I'm selling it now, but you can create these great sales campaigns, service campaigns, much like what Kevin was touching on. And I always enjoy some of the nuance and new things that he's coming up with and what he's finding in the data. It's like, let other people spend money to invest in data, because that's what we do, to be able to pass that data information on so that dealers can create their own strategy off of that. So I appreciate the question. I get very passionate about it.
And Brian, if I could jump in there, I'll get to
Sure.
the crux of it. It's because dealers, number one, they're still evaluating these solutions by straight up just form leads and phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Modern Retailing Conference is going to deliver. The crux of modern retailing is that the modern consumer wants to remain anonymous as much as possible. Form conversion is now down to an average of 1%. And that means you need to be able to know how to properly measure engagement on your website to see what's working. And that's exactly what is happening at Modern Retailing Conference with the presentation on GA4 goals and events, etc.
Yeah, and as we talk about the conference coming up in November, it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th, and the Cox Automotive team will be there. We're going to have a really nice panel discussion to continue this. One of the things that I'm seeing, Kevin, you've spoken at our conference by removing a lot of forms, moving it to conversations. If we really understand exactly what you said, that consumers want to stay anonymous, they want to get their information, and then they're confident and comfortable with doing a remote transaction or a transaction in the dealership. We just got to make sure they understand how easy the dealership makes that transaction. And it almost sounds like, maybe the pendulum swings back and forth. We were so focused on VDP views and VDP marketing and inventory, dynamic inventory ads, and all those things. But now we don't have a lot of cars to VIN target. We're moving to an awareness that EVs are coming, and there's really a build to order strategy. Are we chuckling inside a little bit that our marketing needs to go back to brand awareness, top of mind awareness, that whether you want an EV or a vehicle, you want to lease, finance, or if you want us to get it, there's only one place to go. Come to Wyler.com. Are we, in a sense, going back to marketing 101, be top of mind for the consumer and clearly state your value proposition?
Yes, yes, and yes. And the struggle here is for dealers and how to measure that success. I painted a picture earlier this year where in 2016, I transitioned to a full digital branding approach. And the great news to dealers is that, I'll give you, for example, I spend 0.7 of a penny to put a 6-second branding video in front of a consumer, and I can pound out millions of those per month. Fortunately, in my Cincinnati market, there's an annual Sinclair study which shows they research brand name recognition. Like, if you were to buy a new car, what name do you think of, etc. We were first in 2016 with a 10 point, and our next closest competitor was at 8 points. We are now at 22 points. We are more than twice where we used to be, and our next closest competitor is around 6 points. And it's all because of branding. We have made our name top of the list when people think about things automotive. And one of the greatest things that I see is we literally get reviews from people that say, I cannot escape your message, which is music to my ears.
I think of a very funny entrepreneur, Tracy Myers,
Yes.
independent dealer. He dresses up in his Uncle Sam, and he gets so many emails like, I can't watch your commercials, and he's chuckling at any moment. He's getting consumers to take time to write him a letter. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, brand awareness is so important. And for the dealers listening who say, Brian, I'm selling cars so fast, I've cut back all my marketing. Okay, let me say this. I want to challenge you in that decision. Number one, I believe that as Kevin mentioned, we need to educate our consumers that there's a new way in which new cars will be purchased, and that could be build to order or custom order or grabbing cars that are in transit. We should be having an intentional strategy, a consumer direct buying strategy to buy local used cars instead of going to the auction. We need to be educating consumers on the affordability, the range anxiety issues that consumers have about EVs. And I can keep on going, but there's 3 or 4 things that every dealer should be doing now, regardless of the inventory stocking levels. And, it's so refreshing, Kevin, to hear that you're thinking about these things, preparing, even though we're not selling a lot of EVs today. The interest, I mean, the numbers from Ford just came out, even though their sales are down, EV sales, I think CNBC just covered it, something like interest up 300 and something percent. I mean, we cannot allow, EV sales skyrocket 197% on CNBC right now. We cannot allow the OEMs to be the only people talking about EVs. And if we stay silent, right, it's just going to reinforce a fear that consumers are going to just go to tier 1 and they become order takers. Well, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or is it just ignorance if dealers don't want to advertise, Karrie? It's a challenge. How do we get dealers to be more progressive about preparing their local markets for EVs?
Hey, Brian, that's such a great point. And, Kevin and I have talked about that with what they're doing with Wyler. But when you think about, you said something really interesting, because dealers are still finding ways and making more money with less inventory, although, used inventories coming back slightly, as we're hearing and seeing on some of our consumer sites. It's interesting because it's thinking for the future. And again, it goes back to that elevating your brand. And Brian, you said, are we going back to the future and how we're, thinking about marketing, which I think the concepts and are very similar to times of past, but the messaging is so different. Because it's how are you what is your brand in the marketplace? And there's so many different options now. And why I'm so excited about the future is because there's a million different directions that dealers can take in terms of elevating their brand much beyond even times of past. And Kevin's touched on a few and what they've done with video. And I know we're going to share more of that when we're together in November. But it's really, how do you take that brand and create just an incredible consumer experience? So they talk about it with their friends and family and create this matching them in their life and where they are, and creating an experience that's memorable to them, because that keeps them coming back. And so branding is so critical now, whether it's focused on EVs and even though we're not there yet, I think it's genius for Kevin to start thinking about how are they going to be this expert in EVs, because we're at Cox, we're doing it with our mobility division. I mean, we're figuring out now, how are we helping dealers, one, place values on EVs? How are we helping with, what is the shelf life of these new batteries and technologies, and what's the next phase? So there's a lot of work being done, even though we're not there yet. And those are the dealers that are going to succeed in really thinking about their branding going forward, and not just how well they could be or are doing today.
Well, that is truly a challenge for our industry, even though EV sales are a blip on the P&L. That will not be that way much longer as we look forward to the Modern Retailing Conference. And for dealers, if you're not registered, I encourage you to go to modernretailingconference.com. Look at the agenda. This is an education-filled conference. This is not a vacation. We get up early each day and we go all day in workshops, panels, and keynotes. And the Cox panel is going to be focusing really on the things that I believe are aligned with the question, how do we better prepare our dealership for the year ahead, which includes talking about efficient data strategies, this new car pre-order strategy, and how do we educate our consumers? How do we retrain our staff to deal with today's consumer? And then how do we prepare for, obviously, an EV future? Kevin and Karrie, as you think about the conference, why should dealers come out now? They're busy, they're making money. Why is investing in education, like an event like the Modern Retailing Conference, something that should be on their list? Kevin, I'll start with you.
I can tell you this, every dealer, to include myself, is always going to say, I am too busy to do this. But if you truly want to become better, you need to get outside of that dealership, outside of that office, and network with some of the brightest minds in the industry, to include our partners, third-party partners, to learn and push yourself. Every time I attend one of these shows and return, I have a list of things that I can do to become better. So I am a huge proponent of Modern Retailing Conference and these types of shows.
Karrie, same question.
Yep, I will definitely. I will second everything Kevin just said. I think the thing is thinking about where we are right now and the opportunities within the industry, that if you want to stay relevant into the future and you are truly thinking about long-term success, that without a doubt, you have to start thinking about your brand and how you're utilizing your data and what is your strategy? Like, what is your strategy as a business owner going forward? And I'm most excited because I learn all the time from just conferences, from our clients, from working with partners like Kevin, that I'm most excited to attend and be a part of your Modern Retailing Conference, Brian, because I think what some of the valuable information that Kevin's going to share, but as he said, it's just talking to people who are some of the brightest, forward thinking in the automotive industry. That is such an exciting time to be in this business. And so that's what I'm looking most forward to. And I'm certain others that attend, that'll be the reason they're there as well. So I know it's going to be great, and I look very forward to attending.
Well, I am excited to host you. And for dealers who haven't been to one of our conferences, you should know that the technology partners that are there, they're sending their top people. The dealer groups that are attending, they're sending their top people. And so the networking, getting questions answered. I mean, even deals have been done that in our conferences. This is a who's who with the automotive industry. I want to remind all the dealers that are listening and members of the OEM community that you need to book your hotel rooms now and get your tickets now. We have a limited number of tickets left for the show. It's going to be a sold out, amazing conference, and the weather in Palm Beach, Florida is perfect in November. If you are listening to this podcast for the first time, you should know that I have dozens of interviews with industry leaders, disruptors, and members both from the technology community and the dealer community, sharing their best practices and predictions for the future. So look up the podcast either on the Apple Podcast channel, Google Play, or you can go to brianpash.libsyn, that's libsyn.com, to see all those episodes. Karrie and Kevin, it's always a pleasure talking with you. And for everyone who's listening, make sure you check out the full series of interviews leading up to the Modern Retailing Conference. And we look forward to seeing our industry colleagues and peers in November. So until then, have a great day and continue your learning.